This is a Swans Blog, SwansCast, the original Sydney Swans podcast. We are back, and it is time to put that unspecified virus of unspecified origin in the rearview mirror and focus on the Swans giving it a red-hot crack in season 2021. We've got the match preview, and we're taking a look ahead at the season. We discuss Paddy McCartin and the Swans in the VFL and more. This is your host, Justin, and with me tonight is one of our old favourites, Stephen Treloar. Stephen, thank you so much for joining again.
Cheers, Justin. It's good to be back.
It has been a while. I know we didn't do any podcasts last year. Well, correction, we did two, but we didn't do much for the season after March as a whole, and everything just kind of went into a complete standstill until June when things picked back up again.
Yeah, it was a bit of everything was kind of up in the air with the, AFL needing to be very flexible. But look, it was good we got it any season at all, to be honest. But now, things are a little bit back to normal, and now we can just slot right back in.
Yeah, absolutely. And my hope is that now we have these longer quarters back to normal and lower rotations, we might actually see the Sydney Swans score more than 60 points again.
We can hope.
Look, it hasn't looked that good for the last couple of years, but the signs are definitely promising. And we've had a half-decent pre-season. I know we played against the Giants twice, but we definitely did see some really, really good signs, especially from our new recruits against the Giants, really in the formal pre-season match only a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it was a good match. I mean, we didn't get the win, but that's not what the point of pre-season is all about. I saw some really good signs. Guys who are trying to push their way into the best 22. Chad Warner, probably top of that list for me. For someone who wasn't drafted this year but last year, really kind of showing that good, solid improvement, and having that list depth is what will carry us forward throughout the season.
I thought it was really good, and he got in and had a red hot crack. Really busted his guts to try and show that he can play. He might be, tad undersized to play that inside role, whereas he needs to be more strong. But it could be one of those project players, over time, given the amount of time that we usually give to some of those younger players. For example, Jordan Dawson, he played in the reserves for a good 2 to 3 seasons before he got his first crack at AFL football. He might be one of those players where they just have to play in the reserves a long time and build up that strength and really build up that game sense.
Yeah, he did play 2 games last year, but he certainly wasn't getting the kind of, pure midfield time that he was certainly best at as a junior. But yeah, as you said, give him a bit of time to, a few pre-seasons in the gym, and yeah, he'll just get better and better.
I think it's fair to say that he's no Jack Hiscox.
Sorry, who?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sorry, who? He went on to coach one of the teams, I think it was in the Sydney Football League, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it was Hiscox, but one of our prior boys actually went to South Australia in the SANFL and I think did really well in one of the grand finals or something. It was like one of the best on ground. So it's good to see our players, even if they don't go to great heights with us, if they can still forge a footy career, it's so much the better.
I think probably the biggest surprise, for people who don't really follow the Swans football or don't know a lot about the Sydney Swans in general, but certainly not myself or yourself, Stephen, was watching Tommy Gun McCartin just absolutely kill it in the back line. He was the Gandalf of the match.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, as a forward, I always thought he would take plenty of time to develop, and it would take him a while for him to actually really impact games as one of our main key forwards. But seeing him in the back line, at first I was a little bit apprehensive because, I kind of see him, I do still see him long term as being that key forward option. But, if he gets that development and builds up confidence, and, if he does, end up being our All-Australian fullback, then I'll take it.
Oh, absolutely. Given that we've lost a lot of talent in the back line over the last 4 seasons, we signed Malikan on for a longer contract. A lot of people wondering where Gould's at. We talked about him at length, well, not in the podcast and certainly not on the blog last year, but we have talked about him, especially on social media. And a lot of people asking, where is Will Gould? And the feedback coming out of the match and out of the Swans was that he needs more work. We barely saw him. And when we did see him even temporarily in the pre-season, he was certainly a lot less impressive than he was last year, which kind of makes me wonder if they're trying to mould or guide him and direct him in some way that might be different to what he was as a junior, and certainly more as more specific role player.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen in his, like, as a junior, some of his main strengths are a booming kick, which is always helpful. Kind of burst pace for a guy who's, slightly bulkier. He loves kind of bursting through tackles and just, doing a bit of argy-bargy. But I think since he's joined the Swans, I think they're really trying to focus a bit more on his kind of lockdown capabilities. Um, and I did see him a bit in one of the preseason matches, not the official Amy preseason one, but one of the other ones against the Giants. And yeah, it looks like he still has a bit of work to go on that front. But if the Swans are happy to keep keep developing him down that path, look, I'd be very, very disappointed. I'm sure Gouldy would be too if he didn't get a debut this year. I know so many fans were wanting him to get a crack last year. But look, if we can get him to add that lockdown side to his game as well, he really could be a complete kind of defender for us. He can play any role.
Yeah, absolutely. And we typically, over the years, have had quite an undersized defence. Heath Grundy was 191, maybe 193. And I think it was Malikan for a while there, who was actually the tallest player in defence. Teddy Richards wasn't particularly tall. And also, you're looking at Rampion, I want to say he's, 189?
Yeah, he's not even 190.
And he's only 6'3" or something, and he's playing on one of the biggest forwards in the game, and he usually breaks even, especially against players like Tom Hawkins. Not so much against Jeremy Cameron. Jeremy Cameron's probably got him in a lot of the areas, but yeah, that's just the type of player Jeremy Cameron is.
Yeah, let's not talk about Geelong's forward line. I don't want to think about that.
Now, unfortunately, it isn't going to be too long until we have to think about that. So let's get into the season preview and discuss, what's actually going to happen. We've got the rule change. Well, we've got rule changes that have been discussed in the preseason already. We've got the man on the mark, which is more of a throwback to, late 1970s, 1980s football. You shall not move, but also the sort of thing, we used to see from an under-10s match. Back to normal quarters, 75 rotations, but we've also got the really big change, which is the substitute rule, which has been introduced. It's not 22 players, it's now 23 players that can be registered for a match. The substitute has to be selected, I believe, an hour before the start of the match, and they can participate in warm-up, whereas the other emergencies can't. And Damien Barrett posted up on the AFL a reasonably interesting article, I would say, about his interpretation of how that particular rule can be exploited. Do you want to go a little bit into that about that one, Stephen?
Yeah, so as you said, an extra player can come into the side. Effectively, what it is that if the starting 22 gets injured, and the club's medical staff believe that and the wording on this is very, very kind of interesting, but if they have a reasonable expectation to believe that they won't be able to play for the next 12 days, then they can bring in this 23rd player. At first, people thought this was just going to be about concussion, and that would have made things very clear, very simple. But this new rule is actually can involve any injury. Now, I believe if it's suspected concussion, then that's very simple, out for 12 days anyway. I think that's mandatory from the AFL. But if it's not a concussion-based substitution, then the club staff have to provide a medical certificate to the AFL club, like the AFL doctor, head of health sort of thing, and there's every chance that player can come back and play the next week.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about the medical certificate. It also comes under Rules 2.3, which is if the medicos are found to directly circumvent or go against the rules, and the club, medical department, or even the club doctors are seen to engage in it, it's egregious behaviour, then the clubs are basically in breach of Rule 2.3, which is basically their prohibition on conduct unbecoming or prejudicial to the interests or reputation of the AFL or bringing the game into disrepute. Disrepute, which, S&M will testify on behalf that it's not such a good thing to actually have happen.
No.
So you want to make it clear that although it has some room for manipulation, if clubs are found to be doing it, you can pretty much throw them in the same league as basically salary rorts or cheating or things like that. It isn't going to be some little slap on the wrist. It's going to be a pretty significant slap on the wrist, like all those COVID breaches last year.
Yeah. Premiership points or draft picks. Yeah.
Yeah, and Adelaide also comes to mind, Well, they were trying to do the draft tampering, and that was basically bringing the game into disrepute. So the threat of charge is serious, extremely serious. There's nothing to sneeze at. But, there is a little bit of room here, and there's definitely a little bit of wriggle space and a bit of greyness.
And another interesting thing I found as well, if that, for the 23rd player nominated, it actually counts as a senior game for them, even if they don't get substituted on. If the 23rd player is nominated for a grand final and the team wins, they get a grand final medal, even if they don't get substituted on. So in terms of kind of match player payments and that sort of thing, over the course of a season, over the course of all the clubs, that's millions of dollars that clubs are going to have to fork out for it, basically to have an extra player for match payments.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing was that I did read that usually it's not prohibited. Now, if a senior player plays a reserve match or a VFL match really in the same weekend or same day, we've seen players like Tony Armstrong, former Sydney player at Collingwood, who was an emergency list for the seniors. He played a VFL match the same day. They had a bunch of injuries right before, I think it was 2 hours before the kickoff. And then he had to play 2 matches, 1 3 hours after the other.
Didn't do too badly as well from memory.
No, I know. But it was interesting. It's interesting to view after he says, I can never do that again. But it's one of those really interesting sort of grey areas, especially around the fact that players can go straight from a senior match into a reserve match, even if they're substituted on. And there's nothing stopping them from doing it and things like that. And the other thing is the player payments. They're going to be really, really difficult to work around. At the same time, I think the substitute rule has been needed for 15 years at least. And I think they finally got it right this way around, which is if the player is reasonably suspected of a significant injury, which is usually 2 to 3 weeks plus, there should be no reason now not to substitute a new player in.
Yeah, the kind of mindset behind it and the values that are behind it of, player protection and all that sort of thing. We don't want to have clubs and coaches and coaching staff putting players out there on the field who don't have to be if they're injured. So, look, there might need some tweaking, but the AFL are very good at tweaking these days.
Oh, they are. And I really like the 12 days minimum for concussion. That's really going to have a big impact on some players who might play 2 games within that 12-day period, which is a very high likelihood, especially if you've got back-to-back 6-day turnarounds. It's a long time coming, especially for players who suffer delayed onset of concussion. Callum Mills, for example, in the final hit-out, he did suffer delayed concussion from an impact earlier in the match. And people are sort of wondering why he wasn't having the impact that he was having a couple of weeks earlier. Well, he was concussed. They didn't really know it at the time, but they knew later on and at the end of the match that they could see he was concussed. So, that's the rule. Yep. The rule changes. There's some interesting ones. I like that we're falling back to full-size games, which is, it's a big yay for me. No more evening or what do you want to call it, dusk or whatever, grand finals. No more of that. It's back to good old AFL, normal AFL. And what I want to get into next is a little bit of prediction time.
Oh, good. The one where we can look back at this in, 8 months' time and just have a good old laugh.
Oh, sorry. The experts have given Sydney next to no chance, and the captains, nope. At least no one has picked us for the spoon, which I'm happy with, but I think us in North Melbourne were the only teams, maybe Adelaide as well, not picked to make the 8.
Yeah, I think one captain picked Essendon to make the 8, and I thought that was a bit of wishful thinking, but...
Well, you can't pick your own team.
No.
Yeah, look, I think we're in for a better year than the last 2 seasons. Last year wasn't too bad. We were competitive, but we couldn't get those games across, a line where we really needed to. Geelong, for example, just imagine if we beat them. Well, it wouldn't have mattered for us. It might have made it more difficult to pick up Logan McDonald and Braden Campbell, for example.
Yeah, we wouldn't have got him. Yep.
We've got them both, and we're very happy, but I'm thinking more along the lines of Geelong and how it would have impacted Geelong. Yeah, they would not have made a grand final. If we beat them in round 20, I don't even know what round it was.
18 probably, wasn't it?
18, right, 18 years, something like that. I would have said 23, but yeah, we didn't play that many games. I think it was the middle or nearly the end of September when we played that game, maybe even October.
Yeah, it was the last round of the year.
I kind of remember. I should look at the date, on the computer, but yeah, it's just, imagine we beat Geelong and they don't even make a grand final.
And we only lost to Richmond as well by 10 points from memory. It was a terrible game, but the amount of games where we only lost by 10 points or fewer was really kind of encouraging to see. I mean, we were a bottom four side, but at the same time, we were bottom four side with a percentage of over 90, and that's really, really good. And it shows a lot of promise for the future as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I know North Melbourne and Adelaide at one point had percentages of like 50 and 60.
See any bottom four side with that sort of high percentage like we had. It's not something you see very often, and it kind of points to the fact that, despite not getting all those wins, we were certainly competitive. And if we can kind of turn those, 5-6 point losses to 5-6 point wins, then I think a move up the ladder is possible. Whether it's enough to break into the top 8 for us, like all of us I know would love to get back into finals, but it'd be very, very impressive if we did. I'd be super duper chuffed, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you win about 55,000 other, give or take, plus all the unofficial members and all the diehard supporters around Australia and around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it was a competitive year, no doubt about that. We did see a lot of promise for a number of players, but at the same time, it was disappointing for some other players as well. For me, I really loved watching Aaliyah really play, and I thought he really grew as the season went on, but we traded him, and I still can't believe it. And then we saw some other players who have shown in the past that they can play football that just didn't play either good football or didn't even show any kind of promise at all in training enough to, get a game.
Yeah, with Aaliyah, I don't want to kind of go on about this too long because I'll just it'll be too much of a downer. But all I'll say is now he's at Port Adelaide which already had a solid defence. He'll be able to play the role he should have been playing with us since the beginning, which is that zoning off defender. He shouldn't be a lockdown defender. He shouldn't be a ruckman. He shouldn't be a key forward. He needs to be that zoning off defender like a Jeremy McGovern or Alex Rance back when he was playing. And you just watch Port Adelaide's defence just blossom with that sort of player in there.
Well, they found a replacement like for Justin Westhoff, and the Hoffy's retired. They've brought in literally, could they have possibly gotten a better recruit? I struggle to think of anyone who would be better suited, to be honest, even on the market. Look, it was an interesting year, but, there was some good moments that I really liked about it. But we're looking ahead now. We've got the 2021 season coming up. And there's a lot coming up. We have Brisbane coming up on the weekend, which we're going to discuss pretty soon as well. But then we also have Geelong not that long afterwards, and we have games as well against Adelaide and Richmond, in sequence. Coming up in the fixtures, we've got the Giants again twice, and believe it or not, we play the Suns away, and we play them at home after the bye. So interesting times.
I don't understand fixturing at all. I just smile and nod when it comes out, basically.
Yeah, well, look, it's an interesting picture. Teams are going to be interesting to see what's going to happen, how some are going to fare at the drafting and trading, how the Giants are going to go along, whether or not they're going to play Tanner who had a pretty impressive game against us in the preseason. It's always a massive asterisk, of course. Don't get carried away when kids, they're outperforming senior players, especially in those environments. But, it looks like he could be a pretty good, young player. We've got games against Collingwood as well. There's one at home. That one's round 9. And there could be, who knows how Collingwood is at the time. Jekyll and Hyde pretty much. It could be huge, or it could be literally like a house of cards, just falling down, by the number. So, yeah, where are you putting us on a ladder at the end of the year?
Yeah, I'm going to be pretty infuriating, I think. There's such a wide range of where we could end up. I certainly don't think we'll be wooden spooners. I think we'll improve on where we were last year. I could probably see us being anywhere, probably a high spot. I can see maybe 8th. We might be able to scrape it if things go well. If, say Buddy comes back round 2 and plays every game for the rest of the year and kicks, 70 goals for the year, that'll help. That would help. But yeah, anywhere kind of between, 8th to 14th, 15th, I think is a pretty reasonable expectation for us.
I'm not as optimistic about the 8. I'm more sort of sitting 12th to 15th. I think it's going to be an improvement. I don't think we're going to be as poor as we were last year, but I'm not sure we're going to make some of the gains that teams like Fremantle or Geelong are expected to make and kick on. They were looking really good early last year, and they do have some players coming back. If they can get past their injuries and if they can work on their depth and improve some of the more fringe players, they should be far more competitive and going more for that sort of 9 to 12 position. Really same with Fremantle. So I think really 9 to 15, 9 to 16 is going to be really competitive. You've got Fremantle, potentially even Adelaide might bounce back. They were really impressive at the end of last year. So they'll be in the mix there, the Suns. Definitely Melbourne as well, and definitely Hawthorn. Hawthorn is going to be thereabouts and probably going to be, probably more at the bottom of that scale. But you've also got the Saints who are going to be competing for finals. Port Adelaide will be competing for basically top 2. West Coasters, they're in the finals hunt. The Dogs, everyone's expecting to make top 4. I don't know why. I don't think that recruit's going to kick 50 goals. But let's be honest here. I don't think Treloar can carry the team across the line of finals glory either. But, there's a lot there, and it's going to be quite competitive. And if we can make finals in the next 2-3 years again and really compete, that will be great. But we have an aging team, and the next 2-3 years is just going to continue to be another sort of period of transition for us. When we lose players like Kennedy, Park will be right at the end, Rampy will be at the end or right at the end of the year, possibly final season. Franklin most likely be gone. Reed will just about be gone. Callum Sinclair will be almost gone. And I want to say Mark Seaby, but that's what we got from West Coast.
Well, I think we should just call Tom Hickey, I think you're talking about, but let's just call him Mark Seaby for the whole season. I love it.
Yeah, well, we keep picking up West Coast ruckman, and I don't know what the fascination is with it, really. Yeah, look, it's going to be an interesting season. It's going to be competitive, and I don't think there's going to be any really big sort of standout team from that midfield group. You've got the final group, you've got one big group, and then you've got the bottom group. I think we're good enough not to be in the bottom group, but not good enough to be in the finals group.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that middle group is a good way to kind of visualize it, because I think that middle group could, you could probably fit about probably eight teams. Yeah, it's probably I'd say more than half the teams you could probably fit in that group. The teams who are fighting for basically spots between 6 and I'd say 14, to be honest, because you can probably fit them almost anywhere in there.
And you've got the Giants also on the fringe as well. We don't know where to put them. They've lost players. They keep drafting quite well. They still have a really good bunch of midfielders, but you just don't know where to fit them in. And a coach with a better game plan, they probably would have dominated the AFL for the last couple of years, but they haven't. So that's the Giants really. Just on the topic of Franklin, I don't want to be facetious, but can you give us your prediction on Franklin this year?
Well, he's either got to... Well, let me put it this way. A lot of talk is saying that he will come back somewhere between round 2, either round 2, round 3, round 4, somewhere around there. How many games he'll play could be 2, could be the rest. It all depends on how his body holds up, of course, but look, he's had a lot of time to prepare for it. I'm hoping he'll play at least a dozen games. I think that would be a good return. And if from those dozen games we get, 30 goals, I think would be amazing from him. But, anywhere between 20 and 30. That would be great. But, look, it could be anything. It's so hard to predict with him.
He's played, 10, 12 games, I think, in the last 3 years. So, yeah, I would have thought after year 5 that this will happen. It's been a bit of a mixed bag. As far as his contract goes, he was extraordinary in the early parts. And then, it's got more past 2019. He just hasn't been able to get on the field. So even 2018, in 2018, he had that heel injury for the whole season. And he really should have probably missed half the season to rest and recover and heal from it. And you can even go far back as 2017 when you're still having issues. And it's just one of those things where the last 3-4 years have been really impacted for him. So even the back, he's had those back problems 4 or 5 years ago now, and he apparently still has them. So it's going to be interesting. I'm hopeful he comes back and he plays a dozen games. It would be good at least. Got to get something out of the last 2 years of his contract. Otherwise, it just doesn't look particularly good business. Yeah. That we've got a guy who's injured for half his contract.
Certainly not on field. Off field's another story, but
yeah, definitely success there. 100% can never take back the 2014 or 2016 almost achievements, but could have achieved so much more had we been able to keep them fit. I mean, there's a story of certain players, like Sam Reid.
Yep.
Yep, he's
But
finally fit.
if you have nothing nice to say nothing at all. So I could go on about Sam Reid. I feel for the guy, but anyway, let's just move on there.
No, he's fit. The important thing is he's finally fit.
Let's see how he goes this year.
So, who are you picking for our leading goal kicker at the end of the year?
Oh, look, it's pretty interesting because in 2020 we didn't really have many key forwards available, and suddenly this year we might have Buddy back for a bit. We've drafted a seemingly brilliant key forward, who's pretty much AFL ready now. But I think it'll still be Tom Papley. I mean, the way he played last year, the kind of sheer arrogance he had when he had the ball and the stuff he was doing, if he can, kick a little bit straighter every now and then, I think he'll still be a leading goal kicker for us.
Yep, I agree. I've got him at least 35 goals this year. So, yeah, it's going to be exciting. Let's just hope that opposition teams don't blanket him like what they did last year and basically 2 defenders on him at once. Look at our 3 top draftees. Who have you got to become the most impressive for just this year alone?
Braden Campbell for me. I know Logan McDonald, he kicked 21 goals in 9 games in the Waffle Seniors. This is against guys, a lot of whom have AFL experience, who are much older, bigger, stronger than he is. And that's brilliant. I reckon in the long term he'll be amazing for us. But Braden Campbell, I reckon, and I kind of keep an eye on draft things, and I've seen him play in his juniors. I reckon as of right now, he's probably a top 5 kick in the AFL at the moment amongst the AFL players. He can kick a ball 60 metres, fizzing it along the ground. He doesn't kick those high booming ones. He can kick lace out 50, 60 metres. And I think, and he played a lot of kind of midfield forward in his juniors, but I think the Swans kind of moulding him to play that kind of half-back role, potentially taking kick-outs. I think it's the kind of the best use for him early on. It's where he can use his weapons the best. And look, it's not just his kick. He's got pretty good dash. He can go in and under when needed. I think he'll be, something a little bit special, I think.
Yeah, that's impressive. And look, they might try and share that role with Jake Lloyd as well. He's been taking those kickouts for the last 4 or 5 years, I'd say, since 2016. Really, he's been one of the 2 primary kick-out players, so it is a good opportunity for him to get a good amount of ball, during the matches. If you're kicking out, you're guaranteed to get it. It doesn't really show up as a stat, but 10, 11 kicks, which will give you more confidence as the game goes on.
Well, actually, they are counted as stats now. If you walk outside the goal square, it actually counts as play on, and you get a stat. So
are they now?
Yeah, Jake Lloyd loves padding up his stats a bit, and
well, yeah, of course.
Yeah, but I think with Campbell and Dawson in particular. And if Will Gould comes into the side, they're 3 guys who have easy 50-meter kicks on them, and you can put them pretty much wherever you like on the ground as well. I mean, Gould more defense, but Campbell and Dawson, they're a little bit more versatile, so you can actually have someone who can have a setup where you can have 3 guys kick the ball from one end to the ground to pretty much the other in 3 kicks.
Jeez, so, I mean, that'd be nice. If it could be that simple.
I know, right?
It's not like they're playing against a bunch of 12-year-olds either,
No, true. But anyway.
I haven't seen a lot of Braden Campbell. I really like the game that Errol Goulden played in the reserves. I thought he was really good. So he's a smaller player, and I think he's one who's probably going to make more of an impact immediately compared to the other 2. But I'm not sure what long-term, what his position is going to be, if they're just going to put him in more as a second small forward alongside Tom Papley. He's not particularly tall either. What is he, like 169, 170 or something tall? So, yeah.
Yeah, like 173, I think. And that's certainly his main weakness. If he were 10 centimetres taller, he'd be a wonderful midfielder.
Whoa. Hold on a second. What about short fry from the Western Bulldogs? Caleb?
Say who now? Oh, Caleb Daniel.
Forgot his name. Well, he's got 2 first names anyway. I always forget which one it is. He's not even 170.
Oh, barely, yeah. But, he's not playing inside mid, is he? He's playing kind of that half-back sort of role. But I'm not saying he won't be, Errol won't be a great player for us. But his ceiling and how well he can go, I think is still a bit up in the air. As a junior, he was a brilliant accumulator of the ball, has excellent vision when kicking inside 50. He's got some really good skills there. But when it comes to, coming up to AFL standard where everyone else can kind of do that sort of thing as well, and they're also much bigger than you, it's going to be interesting to see how he goes. I mean, Caleb Daniels is very well playing his role. I don't think Errol can quite, I think it'll be a bit of waste of his talent if he did end up playing that kind of half-back role, and even that small forward role. I think, he could be so much more. But it's going to be a matter of waiting and seeing how he does adapt to that AFL environment.
Yeah, 100% agree. And he was impressive. Some of the goals and some of the plays were outstanding from a guy literally coming in and just playing, his first or second kind of senior hit out. Not really an official senior game, but, a senior level hit out.
Yep.
He might have played some some NIAFL games as well. But like in a quality, really good sort of first taste, it was quite an impressive performance to watch. And Logan McDonald, we'll touch on him really, really briefly. Well, I reckon he's going to play probably about 10 games, maybe more. I don't think they're going to overplay him. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't play him that much at all, but I think he might be good for about 15 goals, roughly 15 goals this year. But it'd be great if we could get more out of him. But the most impressive thing, apart from the length of the guy's arms, which are freaking huge. I mean, the guy's got arms like a giraffe has a neck, okay? They're just ridiculous. So, and him just standing in a pack and sticking up his arms and taking, it's just a mind-blowing mark. His kick was crisp, just flush and carries. That goal, his first goal he kicked against GWS and in a practice match, it was wow impressive for a dude just coming off the draft line.
Yeah, definitely. I'm probably a little bit more optimistic on Logan than you are, Justin, just because he's already done this at waffle level. He's already played against the big guys, and he kicked 21 goals in 9 games. So that's 2 and a bit goals a game. I think, whether in terms of how many games he'll play, I think it does depend on who's available, namely Buddy Franklin. If he's there, it kind of falls between, does Sinclair play as a key forward / relief in the ruck? Does Sam Reid play that extra role? Heaney's coming back and he'll probably play mostly forward this year. It's a kind of a matter of, I think, who we're playing against in the matchups there. But I wouldn't be too worried about playing him, when needed. Just so long as we don't overload him. That's a risk with any kind of first-year player. But he's done it against the big boys, and I reckon, give him a go. I reckon us getting him where we did at pick 5 or wherever it was, pick 4, absolute steal. And I reckon, because the Jamara Ugle-Hagan, who went to the Bulldogs, widely touted to be a number 1 pick, I'd have Logan just as good as him, and by the end of their careers, he might even well be better.
Yep, 100%. And look, the interesting thing, and I don't want to touch on this because we still have a lot more to go through. We're already a fair way into the show. The interesting thing was that most of the draft runners, or, the fantasy drafters and whatnot, and a lot of the predictive drafts actually had Logan McDonald number 1 for quite a bit through last year. So it was quite interesting seeing him slip all the way to 5, and we needed a defender or a forward, and we got a good quality forward. There is no doubt about that. I was shocked that Adelaide went for their forward ruckman. I thought McDonald would have been second at least, so absolutely stoked to get him. But it's time to move now on to the next thing, which is our social media responses.
Yep.
So we put the question out there, Stephen, and we asked, what are you looking forward to most this year? And we did get 4 really good responses from the group. So I'll kick it off. We've got Jonathan from Twitter. He said, I think top 10 will be a pass mark. Looking forward to seeing all the kids debut, and the older kids keep on improving. Glad to see you guys are back also. Yeah, we are back. And Jonathan, thank you so much for following us on Twitter.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, top 10. That would be, I think, we should all be pretty happy if we do get that around there. But, if we go a bit lower than that, around the 12 mark, we'll take it. And, to have another higher pick, even if it's like another top 5 pick in the draft this year, I think, just to add more youth to the strength we've already got there, I think, there's silver linings to that as well. So Ashley from Facebook, I'm just looking forward to watching all the young kids blossom. And yeah, I mean, look, that's the kind of exciting thing about the Swans at this point, isn't it? We've got such a good young core of players, even like, key position, basically filling out a whole kind of, all the kind of positions that are needed, really. We could probably do with another key defender coming through the list, maybe a ruckman, but we've never really been too good at developing our own rucks. But yeah, look, there's so much there to be excited about, and if we get the wins and everything as well, so much the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got two from Luke and from Peter on Facebook. They're very similar, and I'll just read them out. We've got Luke saying, energy, players attacking the corridor and being given the freedom to play on and quickly. And Peter, play an attacking brand of footy and really take the game on. And I think that's the key right there for the season, Stephen, is really just have a red hot go, get stuck in and just play fast.
And that rule of standing on the mark and not being allowed to move at all, that's what's kind of happened. The guys who have that kind of quick burst and who can play on quickly, they're the guys who are really taking advantage of it, and it is producing kind of a more exciting brand of football. So, if the players can get used to that rule, and, our quicker guys, our more nimble guys, can really take advantage of that, and, away we go.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the interesting points that came out of the pre-season round was some of the teams who like to play that gung-ho, that really attacking style of football, said that basically they needed to change a game plan to slow down.
No such thing.
No such thing. Well, I mean, when you're kicking forward and there's only defenders, and your forwards, it's still at half back, you might have to slow down a touch, just get the ball under control. It is time now to move on to the match preview between the Swans and the Lions on Saturday night at the Gabba. Yep. The Lions have got a couple of outs. We've got a couple of debut players. Stephen, do you want to run us through the debut people?
Yeah, so we've chatted about them before, but Errol Goulden, and if the crowd doesn't sing Errol at the matches, then what are you doing? Logan McDonald will be playing up forward, and Braden Campbell in as well. So these are the three guys. Yeah, we've talked about them before, but there's so much scope for them to really be great players for us. And against Brisbane, look, they're a top 4 side. We were a bottom 4 side last year, so it's a big test for them to start up against, especially Logan McDonald, who will probably be matched up on Harris Andrews, one of the best defenders in the league at the moment. Welcome to the big time.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And if there's anything he might be able to get over Harris Andrews, it's those really long arms. So stick them up nice and high. I think it's reasonable in this case to not get too overboard with this match, and certainly expectations of the kids who are just starting. I think it's good to just watch how they play and hope for the best, but don't get too carried away. Now, teams aren't out yet for this match. We're recording on Thursday evening. Teams for this one won't be officially released until Friday night. I'm currently on the AFL site, and there's no news there for it at all.
Yep, tomorrow night.
We just know that those three are in and they're playing, and that's it.
Yep. Keep an eye out on the socials, though. We'll probably post something out about the teams and, guys who might be missing, guys who are surprisingly in, maybe, and keep the chat going there.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, do you have a predicted scoreline or margin or winner in this case?
Look, I think it'd be even the biggest Swans optimists would be kind of pushing their luck to say we might win against Brisbane, especially at the Gabba. But look, Brisbane might win by 40 points, but that's not what I'm really. They might, and they're one of the best teams in the comp. And in terms of their, the way their list has been building, the way they've been developing over the past, since the end of 2018. They're going to be guys who are pushing for finals and pushing for a grand final this year, and that's simply not us. So, I don't think I don't think the score and getting the wins what we should be most kind of focused on. If we see good signs from the kids, if we make things uncomfortable for them, then that's fine by me, to be honest.
Look, I think you might have the experts on your back. I'm going through the experts now, and none of them picked Sydney.
Yeah.
So the totals were Brisbane 12, Sydney zip. So, yes, a little disappointing experts. You can do better than that. Brisbane do have a couple of outs. That cheeky little bugger who's pretty good, he's out. I love watching him play, Rayner.
Cam Rayner, yep.
Yeah, I love watching him play. He's a cheeky little bastard. He's a miss for them. I think he's a miss for football in general. He's a good player, a good young player, and he is entertaining.
Really primed to break out this year as well, so it'll be really good when he comes back, and hopefully he can kind of pick up where he left off.
Yeah, exactly. Is it bad that he's missing against us? Hell no. If anything, it probably doesn't really change much. We didn't do too badly against them last year. I think it was 43-70 or something like that in 16-minute quarters. So I think a year on, they haven't really changed much. They've got Danaher now playing, so that's a bit of a difficult one to deal with.
Who'd want him?
Yeah, well, who'd want him? Well, us? No, we didn't want him that much. We only had to give up everyone, the entire draft, and then some. Bloody Essendon. I would think that we would be in the 5 to 6 goal sort of mark behind them. Looks like a hard one. We usually come to these and say, whatever our hot tips, doomsday, sure thing, things like that. I think in this week, it's kind of low expectations. We just want to see the kids play and play well and have a bit of fun out there. Look, I'm looking forward to what Stephen. I'm looking forward to the match and the season kicking off for us. And let's just talk about the reserves, eh?
Yeah, got a new reserves team coming up, which is great to see. And, the East Coast VFL, which is one of the weirdest names I've ever heard in my life. But, I'm a Swans fan, but I'm a Melbourne boy. So if I can get to see some of the Swans youngsters a bit more down south, then, bit selfishly, I'll take that any day.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm surprised they just didn't call it the EAFL, Eastern AFL. You've got the Waffle, Samful.
It would make sense, wouldn't it? But no, the VFL's got to, keep its head in.
When more teams from the northeast of Australia start getting added to that league, then they might have to rethink it. But it's interesting now that Sydney, they've been added to that football league, the Reserves League, and we have the one and only Paddy McCartin playing for us in the reserves.
Yeah, look, it's really good to see him back there, and I think this sort of format's the kind of best way for him to kind of dip his toe back in and just to see if, see if he can actually, take the knocks that senior footy can bring, and if he does do well, we do have a spot on our senior list. We can draft him halfway through the year, which is excellent. So, and again, similar to our young kids at the moment, don't put too much expectation on him. But, if he does do well, he's a former number one pick we can just add to our side, and that's excellent.
Oh, yeah, look, I was against picking him up using any sort of draft picking him up. If we could have picked him up in the delisted draft in a sort of way, that would have been great. But for drafting, even if we could have picked him up in the rookie draft, I wouldn't have been against it. But we do have a big team as it is. And it is quite likely that we're going to have to cut players at the end of the year. And if we can pick him up and put him on the supplemental list, say mid-season or at the end of the season in place of some of our low-performing players or fringe players, I think that's a win, 100% a win. Especially when you've got players like Callum Sinclair and Sam Reid and Lance Franklin, certainly in the next 2 or 3 seasons being in retirement or right on the cusp of it.
Yeah, I agree. At his age is kind of the, ideally he would have been playing since, his draft year, but to have someone of that age and that kind of, at that level on our list, I think, there is a spot there for him.
And it'll be great. It'll be another type of Richards deal when Teddy and Xavier were playing in the same team together. It would be great if we could get them playing in the team together as well. Oh,
it'd be nice, wouldn't it? At each end of the field.
Yeah, I had a bit of a chuckle when I was watching the preseason match when the commentator's name escapes me, the lady from Fox Footy Channel. Yeah, and she kept referring to Tom McCartin as Paddy McCartin for the first half.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, so I was like, that's not Paddy, but yeah, I'll take that.
Is it Kelly Underwood who's commentating for them?
Yeah, it's Kelly Underwood. Yep. There were a few Blues that match in the commentary, but that was one of the bigger ones.
Oh, well, look, I mean, all the commentators make some sort of blue. When you've got Brian Taylor hosting Friday Night Footy, he gets, a couple of names wrong at least every match, so you can always rely on him for that.
Yeah, he just throws a banana in there and everyone forgets.
Yep.
Lloyd.
Oh, don't.
I know. I'm going to stop. So, what are your expectations for, I don't know what you want to call it, the expanded VFL for the year?
Yeah, so look, the kind of guys we've got in there, and the fixture hasn't been released yet. full team lists haven't been released yet, but we've got some former academy boys. Jake Bartholomeus I saw was in there. Sam Thorne, who I was quietly hoping would be picked up for the senior list in the last draft, he's in there. We've got guys, former Carlton player Ben Silvani. We got a Silvani playing for the Swans. Who would have thought that?
That's right. Yeah. The only one missing is a Danaher now.
Yeah, I know, right? Danaher, we'll get them all in. But yeah, look, it's really good to see kind of decent competition for our reserves players, because at the Neapel, back the way it was, there was only kind of 4 AFL quality teams there, and no disrespect to the other teams, and they have improved. The league itself has improved a lot over the years, but to have kind of that much more AFL talent to compete against will only be a good thing, I think.
Oh, 100%. And they're going from a league where, you're right, where teams were winning by 150 to 180 points, like absolutely belting the living daylights out of Northern Territory Thunder, and some of the lesser talented New South Wales teams are basically skinning them alive. They're going to be playing against teams that have long histories, have very good depth teams, certainly have AFL listed players or near AFL quality players on the list. We can always go back to the Essendon saga to see that they dug into the VFL and ripped out, I think it was 12 players from the VFL. So they have that.
Yeah, there's certainly quality there.
So it's going to be more competitive, way more competitive than the Neapel. Every week it's going to be a competitive game. I think it's going to be really good for the reserve players, especially players who are desperate, to prove that they can still cut at AFL level. So you're looking at maybe your Bells, your Foots, your McInerney's, Wicks if he's in and out. And the draftees, it's going to be a really good opportunity for them to get game time. It'll be amazing to see. I don't know if they'll ever do it, but Franklin playing in the reserves, that'll be something.
Well, to come back there. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, look, can't wait for it. And, despite the whole, VFL thing, as a Melburnian, I do kind of love that most of the teams are in Melbourne. Get to watch some good footy each week.
Yeah, we're going to get a chance to be more exposed to some of those players than we otherwise would be. You and me, we're both Melbourne-based. We've got part of our family from Queensland, New South Wales, Tasmania. We've even got people over in Western Australia who do casts with us sometimes. So we are spread out, and it's great to see that for at least a few of us, we're going to get or have more opportunity to watch our beloved Swans play locally, which is always a good thing.
Hear, hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheer for that one. Well, I'm going to wrap it up, Stephen. So thanks so much for coming along tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on again.
Yeah, cheers, Justin. And tell you what, it's good to have the footy back.
Oh, it is great to have the football back, and even better, the podcast.
Woohoo!
And until next time, cheer.
Cheer, mate.
Cheer, the red and the white, honour the name by day and by night. Lift that noble banner high, shake down the thunder from the sky. What though the odds be great or small, Swans will go in and win over